Greetings and welcome everyone. My name is Lokita Maka. Thank you so much for joining me. If you are new to this channel, please subscribe. If you're a returning subscriber, welcome back. Thank you so much for your continued support. In this session, I want us to look at the animal reproduction. So this involves male and female reproductive systems, the estrous cycles, mating, and all of those things. But I want us to start with Unit 1 and Unit 2 that focuses only on male as well as female reproductive systems. Now, let's get to it. Now, I want us to look at the male reproductive system, right? Just the structure. And as a grade 12 learner, if you're in South Africa and you are preparing yourself to write an exam, now you need to know the structure by head. You need to be able to label the structure by head. You need to know the functions, or rather, the main functions. It may not be all of them because even in this session, I'm not gonna go through all of them one by one, but I'm going to touch on the important structures. And with those structures, I want you to know where they are found, be able to locate them, be able to understand their function, and also be able to describe them, right? Now, let's start with the testes, right? Now, this is basically the primary sex organ where the spermatozoa is found, right? Now, somebody may be asking, what is the spermatozoa? Now, this is basically a plural of spermatozoan, right? Which is the male gamete or the sperm cell. Now, these sperm cells are found inside the testes, right? Now, the testes are made up of what we call seminiferous tubules as well as connective tissue. Now, the connective tissue contains cells of Leydig. The seminiferous tubules contain the spermatogonia as well as cells of Satelloid. Now, one may be asking, okay, fine, you said we need to understand where is it located. We are able to identify then the function, right? Now, what is the function of the testes, right? Now, what happens here is that the seminiferous tubules where now the process which we call the spermatogenesis. Now, what is the spermatogenesis? This is the process we'll go through just after the slide. So please hang on there. Now, this is where this process occurs, right? Now, the spermatozoa are made from spermatogonia. Okay, so basically, okay, let me not um, keep you on that one. Basically, the spermatogenesis is the process by which spermatozoa is produced. Now, how are these sperm cells produced? Okay, fine. Now, the cells of Satelloid nourish now the developing spermatozoa. Then what happens next? The cells of Leydig now secrete the hormone which we call testosterone, which stimulates a bull's libido as well as sperm production. So those are the basic functions of the testes, right? Then we've got what we call a scrotum, as you can see on this diagram, just below the testes. The label actually is just below the testes. Okay, fine. Now, a scrotum is a thin muscular sac, right, which contains now the testes. So basically, the testes are covered by the scrotum. Okay, so keep that in mind. We've got the testis, then just outside the testis, we've got the scrotum. So the next layer is the scrotum. Okay, fine. Now, what is the main function of the scrotum? So basically, the scrotum regulates the temperature of the testes by descending them to cool or retracting them to warm up, right? So this is done by relaxation or contraction of the cremaster muscle attached to the abdominal wall. Now, this is important because spermatozoa develop best when slightly cooler than body temperature. I hope that makes sense, right? Then we have just below the scrotum, as you can see on the labels. Now, as you can see, this is not on the outside, but it's just inside. Now, this is basically the layer in between, right? We have the testis, as you can see. Now, follow that line or the label. Then we have between that we have epididymis. Then outside now we have what we call the scrotum. We've just touched on scrotum. Now let's go on to the epididymis, right? Now this is the sac-like structure attached now to the seminiferous tubules on one end and the vas deferens on the other, as you can see, right, on this diagram. Now we're going to touch on vas deferens. So what is the vas deferens, right? Now the epididymis stores the spermatozoa until they are mature. It concentrates them into the liquids and then transport them from the testes to the vas deferens. Again, we said now this is the sac-like structure which is attached to the seminiferous tubules on one end, then on the other end it is attached to the vas deferens. Then what is this vas deferens that we are talking about? Now, look at the diagram again. Look at where the vas deferens is. Now again, be able to label this diagram. Look at the diagram carefully, right? Now, the vas deferens is a muscular tube, right? Now, what does it do? It joins now the epididymis to the urethra. Okay. Now, it is thicker near to the urethra end and then passes through the seminal vesicle as well as the prostate gland. Now, as you are listening to me, just look at this diagram. Try to understand what is going on here, right? Now, we've just touched on urethra. And just after that, I want us to now understand what is the urethra, right? But before we do that, what is the function now of this vas deferens that we are talking about? Now, the vas deferens moves spermatozoa from the epididymis to the urethra by muscular peristalsis, right? Then what happens now? Then the seminal vesicle. Now, this is one thing that I like is that you can see all these in this diagram, and I want you to keep this diagram in your head, be able to label this diagram. If you are able to do so, take a picture, print out, remove the label, try to practice, label them yourselves. Do that practice because this is very important for your exams, right? You need to be able to label them, right? Now, the seminal vesicle as well as the prostate gland secrete fluid to dilute the spermatozoa and then provide nutrients now to the spermatozoa to stay healthy as well as fertile. Now, this mixture is now called a semen. Now, the thickened end of the vas deferens produces powerful contractions called during ejaculation, right? Then we've got what we call the urethra. Now, the urethra is a muscular tube that runs from the bladder to the end of the penis. So, what does it do? What is the function now of this urethra, right? So, the urethra is the common canal for urine as well as semen, right? Then we have what we call the corpus gland, which secretes a fluid to lubricate and clean the urethra. As you can see, far right on your diagram. Then now, another important structure that we have in the male reproductive system is the penis or the penis. It's up to you how you pronounce it, right? Remember, this is the world of democracy or the country of democracy. So it's up to you, my darling. Right. So now the penis of a bull shape of a bull is like S shaped, right? As you can see. Now I want you to look carefully at this diagram. All right. Tell me if you can see that S shaped. That S shape. Now this S shape now allows it to be contracted completely when flaccid. Now, when erect, then that S shape will then straighten, right? So, what is the function now of the penis? So, basically, the penis is the male mating organ. Now, it needs to be erect in order to penetrate the vagina of the cow during mating. Now, again, if you are doing agricultural sciences as well as life science, if you are fortunate enough to do both of them, then this is not different. Like the reproductive system, they are quite similar. Yes, there will be few differences, but the processes are quite similar. So make sure if you master the other, don't feel frustrated when it comes to the other subject, right? Then we've got this process which we call the spermatogenesis. Now, as I have mentioned earlier, this is the process by which the spermatozoa are produced, right? Now, it takes about 65 days to complete and occurs continuously in the seminiferous tubules in the testes, right? So we said 65 days, right? Now, it will begin with one cell, which, will, which we call the spermatogonium, right? Which is a diploid, right? And then ends with four spermatozoa, which are haploid, right? Now, there are two divisions involved in the process, right? So, mitosis is then followed by meiosis. Now, again, if you are doing life sciences, don't think this is different. That process of mitosis as well as meiosis that occurs in Human beings, this is the same process, right? Then now what happens then? The spermatozoa that are produced contain a single copy of DNA, right? And the head. Then now the centriole connects the head to the mid piece, which contains mitochondria to provide energy now for mobility. Now do me a favor. If I say, or if I mention now any term that is new to you, that is different to you, just write it down. Go to your textbook, check that term on your glossary, or go to your dictionary, check that term. Go to the internet, check that term, or leave the comment down below. I'll be glad to assist you on that, right? Then again, now the tail contains a filament to assist with mobility. Now again, look at these two diagrams. Now these are provided with labels. Here's the thing. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to be able to label these diagrams, be able to know them by head. Try to draw them out. If you know that you are a learner who wants to do things by hand, try to make a model. Use a colored dough. If you are a play dough or a plastic, make models for these stages, right? Then write the names down, write the stages down, right? If you know that you are that learner who is an auditory learner, try to create a song if you have to. Look at the sperm anatomy, look at the spermatogenesis on its own. Look at these processes, be able to identify the head, the middle piece, and the tail. Be able to identify the plasma membrane, right? Be able to, or on some diagrams, the plasma membrane may be called as, or may be labeled as the filament, but know where the nucleus is, the acrosome, right? The mitochondrion, which is spiral shaped. Be able to label these diagrams. Understand them. Besides labeling them, also understand them. What is mitosis? What is meiosis? Right? Now, let's look at the sterility and infertility of the bulls, or in bulls. Now, if we look at sterility, if we're saying a bull is sterile, now this is a permanent loss of the ability to reproduce. But if we're saying it is infertile, like when we're talking about infertility, we're talking about something that is temporal, right? Now, infertility is temporal. Okay, I just saw a mistake on my spelling there. Please forgive me for that. On infertility. Okay, I think I was too fast when I was typing. Yes. Okay, but we're not going to focus on that, right? Okay. Now, what are the factors that cause sterility? Now, sometimes when the or oxen is castrated, right? These may cause sterility, right? Now, remember, we said that this is a permanent loss of the ability to reproduce, right? And also, another thing that may cause sterility is this deformed reproductive organs. Also, injuries now, which may prevent bulls from mating permanently, For instance, if the penis is broken, that can cause sterility, as well as lack of libido. Especially in older bulls, this is possible. And another thing or another factor that may cause sterility is when a bull is affected by a particular disease. So now diseases that attack now the reproductive organs as well and prevent them from producing semen permanently. Now there are such diseases. Then in terms of fertility, one thing that may cause like this temporal inability to reproduce maybe immaturity, right? Now, for example, young bulls will be infertile until they have undergone what we call puberty, right? Now, one may be asking, then what is puberty, right? Are you? Are you asking yourself that? But anyway, if you are, now think about the female, the human beings. Think about human beings. Think what puberty is to human beings. As I have mentioned, one thing that or a favor you may want to do yourself, especially if you also do life sciences as a grade 12 learner, this is not different. Try to understand it from the life sciences background, from the human background, then align it to the animals because it's not different, right? Now, again, another thing that may cause infertility is inexperienced bulls. For instance, inexperienced bulls may need time to practice mating as well as mounting. And again, overweight bulls may not have energy to cover many cows. So now these two, we've got bulls that are not experienced. Now they may still need to learn to mate. They may still need to learn to mount cows, right? Then in contrast, we've got bulls that have been doing this for the long time, you know, like isn't just a game. They've been doing this for long. Now they are overworked, especially now in a case where there's only one bull in the crowd and there are a lot of cows. Now this bull have to service many cows. So in a way they are overworked. Or if I use my bull to mate my cows and then the next few days my neighbor or my friend who is a farmer borrows my bull or hires my bull to mate with his or her cows, then it means that we are overworking this bull, right? Now, this bull may not have energy to cover as many cows as we want. Does it make sense? Right? And again, another thing that may cause infertility is nutrition. Now, poorly fed animals may not have energy to cover many cows. So if you want your bulls to mate with many cows to have energy, then it means that you need to provide it with good nutrition, with good diet, right? Provide pastures, make sure that it feeds well, right? Because this is an investment to you as a farmer, right? Now, we also have diseases that may cause infertility. Now, These may be temporarily. Remember now we said infertility is temporary, right? Now the diseases may affect the bull's ability to mate as well as to produce semen. Then we've got various deformities in bulls. For example, if you look on the left hand side, we've got what we call hypoplasia. Right now, this is the condition when one testis is noticeably underdeveloped compared to the other. So it will appear smaller, right? Now you will see. Now the smaller testis is basically the deformed one, the hypoplastic one, or the hypoplastic testis, right? So this deformation we call it hypoplasia, right? Now I think even with this picture, it's not even quite clear. But if you can go to your Google, try to search hypoplastic testis or hypoplasia, you will see different pictures. Now that will show deformed testes. In some testes, the normal one will even be longer, right, than what you can see on the screen. Then we have what we call, like on the left hand side, what we call a crypto chiasm. Now, this is the condition when one or both testes remain in the abdominal cavity, right? And does not descend during puberty. So again, this what I want from you is to go and read more about the deformities, right? Now, what will happen is that now the possibility here is that the scrotum may not contain the testes. So these testes will remain in the abdominal cavity, right? So now think about it. What does it mean for the case of reproduction? So I've got few questions that I would like to share with you when it comes to male reproductive system. So at the end of this, please do let me know on the comment below, on the comment section below, if you want me to share with you, and then you can send me an email or send me a message, then share your email address. Then I will definitely send the list of questions as well as answers, including the study material that you can use that can help you with this section. Then let's come to the female reproductive system. So we've got two diagrams here, right? We've got the side view of the cow's reproductive system, and then we've got the top view of the cow's reproductive system. So again, the previous section we were talking about the bulls, but now we are discussing the cows, the queens, right? Okay. No, remember I'm one, hey? Okay. So now let's look at the structures. The female reproductive system. How are the young ones made? Where are they carried? Right? What happens here now? What happens here? So now, again, the same thing that I want you to do is you need to master these structures, both the side view, the first diagram on your left hand side. This is the side view of the cow's reproductive system. As you can see now, you can also see the spinal cord, right? Or the vertebral column, right? Now on this other one, you can see that. Of course, so this is just like the top view. So you need to be able to label it. So I want you to start practicing now. Put this in your head. Try to erase these labels. Try to label it. If you have to memorize it, use your photographic memory if you have, but also try to understand it from the human perspective because we are humans, and the reproductive system of animals is not that different from our reproductive system. So most of the things that we know from our bodies are things that we can be able to master from the animals' perspectives, right? For examples, all queens have got a vagina. Whether you're an animal or you are a human being, right? So, but anyway, let's get to it. Let's look at the structures, right? Now, we've got the ovaries, right? I don't want to start with the vagina. Let me start with the ovaries. So don't worry about it. We're gonna get there. Huh? So we've got the ovaries. Now the ovaries. Now remember with the male reproductive system, we started with the testes. Now we said they are the primary sex organs, right? Now with the ovaries as well, they are the basically are the primary reproductive organs, right? Now how does this structure look like? Oh, what is it made up of? So the ovaries are basically made up of an outer shell, the cortex, as well as the inner tissues, which we call medulla. Not medulla oblongata, guys, not that one of the brain. Yeah, thank you. All right. Then their function basically is to produce the female gametes, right? Or what we call ovum, as well as hormones associated with this process. Now, this occurs in the medulla of the ovary. The cortex contains connective tissues, nerves, and blood cells. Then we have fallopian tubes. Now, the fallopian tubes extend from ovaries to the uterine horns. They can be divided into three sections. Now, these sections are the infundibulum, which is a funnel shaped structures at the ovaries, as you can see now on the right hand side. I'm sorry. Then we've got the ampulla, right? Now, this is a thin tube, about half the length of the fallopian tube, that is lined with the ciliated mucous membrane, right? Then we've got the isthmus, right? This joins now the uterine horn and is lined with a smooth muscle layer. So basically, the function of fallopian tubes are to transport over, right? So over are transported now from the ovaries towards the uterus as well, and spermatozoa are transported from the uterus up the fallopian tubes. Now, fertilization and early cell division of the embryo occurs here. So this is where the fertilization happens, right? Then we've got the uterus. Oh, yes. Now, the uterus is a thick cell or a thick walled muscular tube, right? So it can be 35 centimeters to 60 centimeters long, and it is made up of three areas, right? So it is made up of the uterine horns, which connect to the fallopian tubes. It is made up of the body as well as the cervix. Now, the cervix is a narrow opening connected to the vagina, as you can see in this picture, right? Now, the function of the uterus. Now, so basically, the uterus is where a growing embryo will attach and develop into a calf. Now, again, I'm going to say this again. If you are a life sciences learner, don't think this is different. This is not different. Make sure you master this, right? Now, what will happen then? Now, this lining, which we call the endometrium, now will thicken to protect it and then will develop the placenta. Then after that, now the cervix is slightly closed to prevent any infections, but it relaxes now during oestrus and also allows spermatozoa to enter. So it is slightly closed so that it can prevent infection. But now, during the oestrus cycle, which we're going to talk about, it then relaxes, right? So that it can now allow the spermatozoa to enter, the sperm cells to enter, right? Then we've got the vagina. Okay, now the vagina is the thin walled elastic tube that is about 30 centimeters long. Of course, in cows, guys, in cows, yes, in cows. It is connected to the uterus at the cervix, as you can see on this diagram. And then now, what happens here? It opens externally at the vulva. Can you see the vulva? Yes, you can see it. Then the urethra. Now we've talked about the urethra in male organs. Now this will open near the entrance of the vagina. So what is the function of the vagina? So this is the mating organ, of course. Same way a penis is to the bulls or the males. So to the females, the vagina is the is the female mating organ, right? So during natural mating, right, the penis now of the bull is inserted into the vagina, and then now the semen is then deposited near the cervix, and then it will move. Now remember, we said that it has tail and all those things. Now that is the diagram I said you need to master. You need to be able to label all these diagrams, right? Then now remember with males we talked about spermatogenesis. Now we're talking about oogenesis or ovigenesis, right? Now this is the process by which which like the egg cells are produced, right? The egg cells which are basically found in the ovaries, right? Now it begins early in the calf's development. Now this is before birth, guys. Now when an eugonymum differentiates to become a diploid primary oocyte, then now the process then stops after puberty. Okay. After puberty, now what will happen? One primary oocyte undergoes meiosis at a time to produce one secondary oocyte, which is haploid. Now, this occurs on a regular cycle, which we call the oestrus cycle or estrus cycle, right? As long as the fertilization does not occur. Now, here's what I want you to do. Draw this diagram. Compare this diagram to the spermatogenesis, right? Understand what is going on here. Go back now to your grade 10 meiosis and mitosis knowledge. Understand that knowledge, right? Then compare these two. Make sure you are able to label them. Right? Now, coming to the oestrus cycle, as I have mentioned. Now, oestrus is a period when the female is ready to accept a male and to mate. Now, during this period, animals are said to be on heat. So, unlike human beings, guys, unlike human beings, of course, let's not get there, but fine. Now, the animals are said to be on heat. Now, one or more periods of estrus. So, reason I'm alternating the pronunciation is that one person may pronounce it as estrus, one may pronounce it as oestrus. So, I don't want you to feel bad about doing that because my belief is that there is no scope for pronunciation. So, we all here to learn. And as long as you can write the correct spelling, then we are good. We're gonna pass, then we're fine. All right. So as I was saying, that one or more periods of estrus may occur during the breeding season. Now, this period occurs before ovulation and involves the thickening of the uterine lining in preparation for the fertilized ova. Again, if I mention any name that is new to you, that is not familiar, write it down. Go to your textbook, go to Google, go to the internet, try to find it out, try to understand the meaning of that name. Then, coming to the female sex hormones as well as their functions. Now, the estrus cycle is controlled by hormones. Now, these hormones are secreted from various sites in the endocrine system into the bloodstream, now which carries them to the site where they may have effect. Now, we've got various sex hormones. We've got what we call a follicle stimulating hormone. Now, this is situated from the pituitary gland in the brain, right? Pituitary gland, right? And it affects the ovaries. What is the function now of this hormone, right? It stimulates the formation and the development of a follicle, right? Then we've got the estrogen, right? Now this is secreted from the Graafian follicle in the ovary, and it affects now the secondary sex organs and the body in general, right? So its function basically um, is to stimulate and develop the function of secondary sex organs. Now it is important now to note that estrogen and progesterone interact, and the concentration ratios produce desired effects. Now, another thing when it comes to estrogen is that it stimulates behavioral stress, right? When now the cow is ready to mate, right? And it also stimulates fat deposition in preparation for pregnancy, and it relaxes the cervix. Another function for estrogen, it causes contractions of the uterus and fallopian tubes to assist spermatozoon transport, right? And another thing is that it prepares young heifers for onset of oestrus cycle. Then we have what we call luteinizing hormone, the LH, right? Now, this is also secreted from the pituitary gland in the brain, right? And it affects the mature follicle in the ovary. Now, what is the function of this sex hormone? Right? This particular hormone causes the mature follicle to rupture, rupture through the wall of the ovary, and also turns the empty follicle into the corpus luteum. Then we have the progesterone. Now, this is the pregnancy hormone. Now, where is it secreted from? It is secreted from the corpus luteum in the ovary, and it affects the uterus and ovary, right? Now, it is important again to note that this hormone, as well as estrogen, interact, and the concentration ratios produce the desired effects. So what does it do? It thickens now the uterus lining in the preparation for pregnancy. Also, it helps with the relaxation of muscles of the fallopian tubes and the uterus. Again, it now helps to stop other follicles from developing. Now, remember, we said this is the pregnancy hormone. Then we have tropic hormone, LTH, or what we call prolactin, right? This is also secreted from the pituitary gland, right? Now it affects the corpus luteum in the ovary. It affects the immune as well as the blood system. Now, looking at the functions now of this particular sex hormone. So, it basically supports pregnancy and lactation by controlling water and salt balances in the body, by stimulating corpus luteum to release more progesterone, also by depresses immunity and blood clotting. Then we've got the last one, the oxytocin. Now, oxytocin is secreted from pituitary gland as well during birth and lactation, right? Now, it affects uterus, it affects mammary glands, and also body in the and body in general, right? So the function is to stimulate muscle contractions during birth. It also stimulates let down reflex of the milk and also promotes maternal instinct. Right. Okay, we are almost there. I know this is the longest video, but hang on, hang on indeed, hang on indeed. Then we've got the stages of estrous cycle. So a cow goes through several stages as shown in the diagram and the stage, right? Now, this cycle takes anywhere from 15 to 25 days, but usually around 21 days if pregnancy does not occur, right? We've got what we call the Easter cycle, right? Which is the heat period. As you can see, this is a bit darker on this diagram. And on the day of the cycle, it's zero, right? So this lasts for 5 to 27 hours, right? Usually 18 hours, right? This is when now the cow is receptive to mating, when the cow is ready for mating, right? Then we have the estrous cycle or estrous cycle, right? So this lasts for about 3 to 5 days. Now, what happens here? Ovulation occurs between 10 to 15 hours after the estrus, right? Then the corpus luteum develops and a slightly bloody discharge may be seen, right? Then what will happen now after these days, right? We have the second phase or the second stage, which we call diestrus, right? Now, this lasts from 12 to 16 days in cows. Now, this is when the corpus luteum is fully functional and produces now progesterone. Now, remember, we said this is the pregnancy hormone. It affects the uterus as well as the ovary, and it is secreted from the corpus luteum, right, in the ovary. Okay, so now if fertilization occurs, the corpus luteum persists now until birth. If not, then it will progress, right? Now, then we have the next stage, which we call the proestrus. Now, this usually is about 2 to 3 days. Okay, as you can see, right? The proestrus. It is characterized by rapid follicle growth and the effects of estrogen may be noted in the animal's behavior. So we're gonna talk about that. We're gonna talk about the signs and ways of identifying a cow that is on heat. The signs of estrus. On the next slide, we're gonna talk on that. Now, how do you detect them? Basically, detecting when the animal is in estrus or heat is particularly important in commercial dairy and beef enterprises, as this will inform the farmer when to inseminate his cows. Now, this is when you are doing artificial insemination, right? So, if you're a commercial farmer, now it is important to note the cows when they are on heat, right? Now, how do we identify them? How do we identify our cows when they are on heat? Now, we can identify them in two ways: behavioral signs or physical signs. Now, in terms of behavioral signs, now a cow will be restless when it's on heat, and it will move around and it will bellow more. Now, again, this cow, you will notice that it mounts other cows, or it stands to be mounted by other cows. And another thing, you may also notice like fresh scratches and mud on the cow's hindquarters, right? Now, in terms of physical signs, you will see mucus which is excreted from the vagina, right? And also there may be decrease in milk production as well as feed intake. Another thing that you may notice is the vulva that may swell or that may be soft. And also the mucous membranes of the vulva may appear moist and also redder than normal. Okay, now lastly, let's look at sterility as well as infertility in cows. Now, again, as I have mentioned, well, with bulls, is that sterility is a permanent loss of the ability to reproduce, whereas infertility is temporary, right? Now, the factors that may cause a sterility in cows include diseases, right? Now, there are some diseases that may cause a sterility in cows, and these can be transmitted by bulls. Hey, and okay, some of them. Okay, I don't want you to hold me for that. And then deformed reproductive organs as well, or underdeveloped organs, for example, an um, imperforated hymen or hypoplasia of the ovaries. This can affect sterility. Injuries can also prevent cows from mating permanently, and we've got an ostrus. Now, this is the failure of the cow to show estrus behavior, and can be caused by ovarious hypoplasia. Now, this is the failure of the ovaries to develop, right, or the persistence of the corpus luteum. Then we've got any ovulatory estrus. Now, this is when the follicle does not rupture but continues to develop as corpus luteum. Now, what will happen here is then a secondary oocyte is not released from the ovary, right? So that can cause the permanent loss of inability of cows to reproduce, right? Now, another thing is that oestrus can also be used in animals that have a very short heat or period of heat, especially when it's less than 12 hours, or also due to poor management. Now, coming to the factors that may cause infertility. Now, one, immaturity can cause infertility, right? The young cows will be infertile until they have undergone poverty. Now, again, align this to human beings, right? Then, in terms of the retained placenta, now this can be caused by infections. For instance, what we call a brucellosis, right? Now, twins birth or other difficult births over conditioning of dry cow, like all those things. Also, the selenium or like the deficiencies in vitamins, they can cause that. And what we call metritis, sorry for that. Now, this is the infection, right, of the uterus and could be caused by injury. It could be caused by retained placenta. It could be caused by poor hygiene at calving stage, right? It could also be caused by a deficiency in selenium or vitamin E. Now, another factor that can cause infertility is ovulatory failure. Now, due to cystic ovaries caused by too much calcium or a failure now to release the luteinizing hormone, the LH, or too much estrogen in the diet, or even poor genetics or even stress. So that can cause infertility with stress as well. I have mentioned this. Then another thing, abortions can be caused by injury, um, poor nutrition, multiple fetuses, genetic deformity, poisoning, drugs, diseases, or infections. Now, remember, in cows, we say it's abortion, we don't say it's miscarriage. So, with human beings, you will refer it to miscarriage, but to animals, we refer this to abortion. So, now this can cause infertility. So, this can be caused by injury. So, again, make sure you are able to understand the differences between the two, right? Abortion is similar to miscarriage in human beings, but in animals or in cows we call it abortion. As much as abortion in human beings is voluntarily, however abortions in animals is not voluntarily, right? So it's similar to miscarriage, right? So that's it from me. Thank you so much for joining me. I have quite good questions as well as answers that you may be able to utilize in order to prepare for your exams. So, if you are interested in those, please make sure you leave your email below or you send me an email using my email address, and then I'll gladly forward that to you. Then you can use them to practice. If you're a new a viewer in this channel, please subscribe. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you so much. Otherwise, that's it from me. Thank you so much. With agricultural sciences, I'll probably continue with unit 3 we, of the animal reproductive system. Then I'll also look at unit 4 as well as unit 5. Unit 4 is the natural mating, and then unit 5 is the biotechnology as well as artificial mating. So I'll probably look at that. Otherwise, that's it for me. Thank you so much for joining me. I think until next time, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, much love.